The Major League Baseball All-Star break is over. A full slate on this Friday starts the second half and the stretch run of this long 162 we call the regular season in MLB. Again, we'll say it. Every team around the bigs, all 30 organizations, have played at least 95 games of their 162, but we'll refer to it as the second half after the All-Star break. We're just over a week and a half away from the end of July. That's the trade deadline, the next big date, if you will, in the calendar of Major League Baseball. So let's look at where the market is. That the All-Star break is done and action resumes on the diamond on this Friday. Where it is now and where it was at the start of this 2024 MLB campaign on opening day. The Dodgers opened this year as the short favorites to win a World Series, plus 320. They were over $1 in front of the Atlanta Braves. The Astros had the third best price at 7-1, best out of the American League. The Yankees 9-1, the O's and the Rangers, of course Texas, the reigning World Series champs, at 14-1, in the Phils, a 15-1 price. On the right side of that table, DRS, the current prices. So let's rattle them off quickly. The Dodgers still remain exactly where they were, the favorites at plus 320. But the biggest changes, of course, the Phillies up the board, only $1 behind L.A., plus 420. The Yankees have vaulted in front of the Astros. Houston still one of the 10 best prices. The Orioles and the Braves still remain in the top five. And, of course, the Texas Rangers, 4 games under 500 at the All-Star break, a 60-1 number now to go back-to-back as a World Series champ.
Yeah, I didn't really have any issues here to start the season. Always thought it would be the Dodgers here because on paper, the best team in baseball. And as we know, we keep talking about this, when you get to the deadline, they're no strangers to adding on and adding superstar players, not just a bench bat or another bullpen arm. You take a look at the Braves, the Astros, the Yankees, the Orioles, the Rangers, and the Phillies. That made sense. Now, granted, sometimes it's a little bit of, hindsight at this point. You take a look at the Philadelphia Phillies at that 15-1 price to open the season. Maybe that was a little bit higher than expected compared to the Braves at a plus 450. They might have been a little bit closer intact because coming into the season, I still thought the Phillies had a great shot to win. But the MO really of the Phillies is what? Let's meander around for the first part of the season, turn it on we need to. The superstars will play, and away we go into the playoffs. We have the good 1-2 punch. So maybe that was a little bit off, but I can't fault the people for saying, hey, Rangers just won the World Series 14-1, extremely talented. They'll get some of those starting pitchers back around mid-season, and away they go. Now, they certainly have fallen off. Now, take a look at the updated odds here to win the World Series. Again, still talking about some of those odd points where it's the Dodgers. It's expected to be a contender in the playoffs, and we agree. I just don't believe right now the favorite should be the Dodgers, because sometimes it is, what have you shown me on the field? And you might get that argument, Ben, 2, 3, 4 weeks into the season. You're not getting that argument now as we sit on July 19th. The Phillies are the best team here. I just think they should be priced accordingly to that standpoint. But I understand how the odds work and how they get to those numbers and the expectations at the end of the season, because once again, you're not winning the World Series on October the 1st. You got to make it to the playoffs, and you have to play well in the playoffs, and the Dodgers certainly will be a contender at that time.
Honestly, I think that's the most interesting data point of all the market movement we have seen since the end of March, opening day, to where we are now at the end of the All-Star break. The Phillies are the best team in baseball, 62 wins, the most in the bigs. All right, it makes sense. Their number that was already relatively short has grown dramatically shorter to win a World Series, also with the postseason pedigree the Fightins have had the last 2 years, appearances in the NLCS. The Astros and the Rangers have struggled. Okay, their prices grow a little bit longer. The Yankees, the O's, they're pretty much based on expectation, and the Braves have taken some knocks, no doubt, based on injuries, so their price moves a little bit. But the Dodgers have remained exactly the same. Not 10 cents longer, not $1 shorter. LA is still very good. They're leading the National League West by 7 games. They have the second best record in the NL, albeit 6.5 games behind Philadelphia. They're still 15 games above 500 at 56 and 41. But to have the exact same number way back in March to where they are now, nearing the end of July, is fascinating to me. Because the Dodgers entered the All-Star break losing 8 of their last 11 games. The Dodgers have so much talent on the injured list. I think there's a compelling argument you can make that LA's IL team could be its current day roster emerging here out of the All-Star break, mainly in their starting staff and the arms they have on the bump. And the Dodgers have stayed the exact same. You would have thought, Donnie, maybe some movement in the numbers based on how the Dodgers ended that first half entering the All-Star break. But I think the odds makers are reluctant, knowing all the talent that awaits and probably some big moves to be made in the next 11 days before the MLB trade deadline.
Yeah, it's the same thing when we try to equate it to other sports, which we like to do to give that, advantage and say, well, has there ever been a precedent that's going to be set? The Brooklyn Nets in the NBA, if they were going to get healthy back in the day with James Harden and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, obviously the regular season is thrown out the window because you're measured on what you can do in the playoffs. And the bookmakers thought that if Brooklyn could make it to the playoffs and be completely healthy, they would be able to do damage. Well, it's really the same wavelength, but the Dodgers aren't struggling to make the playoffs. They're going to win the NL West. They're going to be in the playoffs and probably the number 2 overall seed with a great path to meet up against the Philadelphia Phillies in the NLCS. Just want to have home field advantage, which does make it a little bit tougher. But once again, that point-driven home in the past, the absolute superstars that the Dodgers are able to acquire at the deadline is unlike anything that we even attempt to look forward to. Because if everybody could do it, they would. If the Guardians could go at the deadline and get the top 2 pitchers on the market, they would do it. The Yankees and the Mets. But it seems like the Dodgers operate in a different stratosphere where they always have prospects. Why? Because they have a great farming system and a great scouting department that continues to reload in that international market. And also, when you ask them, hey, boy, we're going to go over that tax threshold, they don't care. It's the Los Angeles market. Those owners are buying in to win baseball games, not worrying about their money, because when they decide to sell the Los Angeles Dodgers, that's when the windfall is going to come. That's why that price is priced so accordingly, because we are expecting, yes, the Dodgers have talent on the IL. They'll get all of those guys back, which most franchises will say, that's the best trade we can make, just getting our guys healthy at the break. And I agree with that. But the Dodgers don't think that way. The Dodgers might go out and pull like an all-star player to go in their outfield, which is already jammed with talent, or go like, hey, we have addition to make a first base move here, even though they have an unbelievable first baseman. That's the embarrassment of riches that the Dodgers operate under, and that's why they're the favorite.
So we have some movement in the numbers, right? The Rangers have moved back by a ton, 14-1, now 60-1. The Astros were 7-1 before the year, now 20-1. But the Rangers are the only team of that list of 7 that you see on your screen that had one of the 7 shortest numbers to contend for a World Series before the year got underway that is now outside the top 10. The Astros still in the top 10. The Twins were in the top 10 before the year got underway. That's where Minnesota remains. Cleveland, best record in the American League, a half game better right now than that of Baltimore. Also in one of the 10 best prices to win a World Series. And the Brewers round out the top 10 at 25-1. You saw that screen right there, DRS. Those top 10 prices to win a World Series. Is there a bet that you would advise people to make right here, right now, at the end of the All-Star break before that first day of the second half officially begins later this afternoon?
Yeah, I think you're going to get a little bit, the 2 teams that you probably look at, right, if you're going to make an advantage. Like the Dodgers at a plus 320 price, how much value do they have? Well, value's in the eye of the beholder. If they win the World Series, 320 was an unbelievable price. I think the Phillies also still have some value at a plus 420 price. But when you're looking for true numbers that can make an impact here, one of those lottery tickets, of course you're going to look at 50 and 60-1. But let's just stay in that top 5 or top 6. I've been telling you all along about the Yankees at a plus 550 price. Let's be honest with ourselves. You can't win the World Series unless you get to the World Series, to put it in its simplest form. So if you're looking at the Yankees and the Orioles, 7-1 and plus 550, I don't see anybody challenging those 2 teams to make it to the World Series. So I think you have a great shot here if you pick if one, not the other one, if that makes sense, at those prices. I think they're both going to wind up making deep runs in the playoffs, and whoever wins that division is going to have a leg up. And for me, it's still the Yankees. But if you take that 7-1 price on the O's, I can't fault you for that. One of those 2 teams will be there.
More market movement in the pennant prices up next. We marked the movement in the World Series odds here at the end of the All-Star break with the first full Friday slate of the second half about to begin this afternoon into the evening hours. We do the same case study with those pennant prices. We start in the American League, the 6 shortest numbers entering this year on opening day. That was March 28th to where we are now on Friday, July 19th, following the MLB All-Star break. Numbers on your left, opening day. Numbers on your right, that is the current odds. The Astros were the favorites. The Yankees had the second best number. Now the current favorites, Baltimore and Texas, like they were in the World Series numbers, tied for those third best prices, plus 650 for Texas, plus 650 for the O's. Baltimore now that second best price. Seattle has remained the same. The Twins have some positive market movement as well, down by $2.50. So again, Donnie, it's really only the Rangers, the reigning World Series champs, that of course had an optimistic odds outlook in either the World Series market or the AL pennant prices that have seen the worst market movement against them.
Yeah, and again, we're looking at those numbers here, and you usually think, oh, man, the odds makers are way off again. You're getting a steal. I don't have any arguments or any problems with Astros, Yankees, Rangers, Orioles, Mariners, and Twins, even in that order. We expected the Twins to be good. We expected the Mariners to compete out west. We expected the Astros, who are always in the mix for the playoffs, to be there, and now you take a look at them finally hitting that gas pedal and maybe should be the favorites over the second half of the season to win the AL West at that point. And somebody's going to say, like, yeah, well, you should have known a team that wins the World Series is going to completely fall off. Like, no, nobody knows that here. And the Rangers just might be getting their, legs under them right now, just a few games under 500 to compete in a West that's certainly up for grabs at this point. So I do like the job that the odds makers made and just showing that, because sometimes you can just punch holes in arguments. I look at those numbers and say, yeah, that sounds about right to me.
And despite really the struggles for the Astros for a good majority of the opening half of this year, 33-14 even on June 18th, just over a month ago, the price never got much longer than that 8-1, 9-1 mark. Plus 800 is where they enter the second half of this season. Really the biggest story is the current AL pennant odds in some large movement from teams that were not in the top 6 best prices. The reason we highlight 6, that's the number of teams that make the expanded postseason, of course, in each league. Let's start with the negative to begin. The Toronto Blue Jays, 7th best price at 10-1 to win the American League pennant before the year got underway. Now 150-1. We expect the Blue Jays to be sellers ahead of the deadline, maybe ever so, trading Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette. And that 10-1 number, Donnie, pretty reflective of what the last few off seasons have been for Toronto. Expected to maybe make a run, but never truly matching expectation.
No, and certainly not. And again, going back to the odds makers, was anybody looking at Toronto this year going like, yeah, it's probably the year they sell that entire team? This was a team that was supposed to be built for a decade plus with superstars, the money behind them, a good ownership group, a good general manager to make that push and challenge the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees and the Orioles and Tampa Bay. Quite frankly, one of the more challenging divisions in baseball to operate if you are a general manager. So we are sort of shocked to see this, because sometimes you have to weigh the now and the future. Like, are you a better team? And if you say it just didn't work because we're playing in such a good division, let's trade everybody away and start again. That's a tough sell there. They renovated the Rogers Center out there. They were ready for a big baseball season and young superstars to try to provide it. And they just might be piecemealing away to say, you know what? We can't compete with the Yankees, the Orioles at this point right now, and the Red Sox are playing better. Maybe we'll retool for the future, which is tough to sell a market that's used to having success and spending some money.
The biggest market movement in a positive way, 2 teams that would be in the American League postseason bracket if the season ended today at the end of the All-Star break. The Guardians, the champions of the American League Central, would be the top team in the AL, 21-1. They're not on that list. That's the list we need. 21-1 before the year got underway. Slash that price in third, 7-1 now on Cleveland, and the Red Sox down by nearly half, 30-1, take $14 off. Boston 11 games above 500, now a 16-1 price. The Sox, that third and final AL wildcard spot at this current moment. Now let's go to the National League. And again, Donnie, some movement in the prices, but not really the structure of the teams. It was the big 2 before the year. It was L.A. and Atlanta, with Philly trailing ever so slightly behind at an 8-1 price. Again, opening day numbers on your left, current day pennant prices on your right. Now it's still really the big 2, but it's L.A. and Philadelphia, and the Braves in that third spot. But again, even after Atlanta or Philadelphia on opening day, a large drop-off to every other team in the National League.
No doubt about it. And rightfully so. We knew it was going to be the big three coming into it, but you figured that the Braves would be much more of a threat, and rightfully so. But you can't predict injuries to, and we're not talking about like, hey, man, that guy was the key to the rotation. No, you might be talking about the best pitcher in the National League coming into the season in Spencer Strider. Oh, well, you lose Acuna. Yeah, he was okay. No, like an MVP coming into the season. You can't survive that. So shout out the Braves just for hanging around because you're leaning on guys like Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez. If I told you before the season, you're going to lose Strider, you're going to lose Acuna, and your two top pitchers are Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez, you're like, yeah, they might just be retooling entirely in Atlanta and giving up on the season. That's what's so impressive at this point. So you see the updated numbers, right? Dodgers still in first place, which again, I disagree with. Philly's just behind them and closing that gap. And then you see the Braves at a plus 450, where similar to what I was talking about with the Houston Astros, I just don't see them recovering from 10 or so games under 500. They did. Once the Braves were done, I told you, they probably weren't going to win this division. They would still make the playoffs, but not do any damage in the playoffs. But the guy that I wanted to keep an eye on, as we were talking about yesterday, Reynaldo Lopez, if he has an ERA under 2 and Sale has a 2, why can't they compete at this point? Nobody saw that coming here. So sometimes you have to adjust your evaluations of what you saw for the first couple months, because if those evaluations continue, like Sale and Reynaldo Lopez being one of the best 1-2 punches in baseball, sure, they can compete in the playoffs.
And they really are going to. Plus 450. Yes, they trail the Phils by 8.5 games in the National League East, but comfortably in that top spot in the wild card chase. The other two wild card teams currently in the National League, the Cardinals and the Mets, both at 30-1. Both prices have grown longer since opening day. But again, it kind of goes to say that even if you're in the postseason mix, your odds outlook not all that great past LA, Atlanta, or Philadelphia. The Cubbies have seen a lot of movement. They're in the cellar of the National League Central. The Diamondbacks, the reigning NL Pennant winners, back by $8, but they have won 8 of their last 12 to get back to above 500 for the first time in a while. Individual award races in MLB next. All of the individual award races that had a price on the FanDuel Sportsbook on opening day and still do. That's our last step of market movement here at the conclusion of the MLB All-Star break. We start in the American League. On your left, preseason favorite. On your right, that current favorite with the odds associated. In the American League, it was a Yankee to win the MVP award, but it was Juan Soto. Now it's Aaron Judge at minus 370. Judge did have the second best price behind his Bronx teammate at a 7-1 number. Corbin Burns has the second best price now, but Tarek Skubal is the favorite to win the American League Cy Young Award. This tidbit from our producer, Joe Frizo, as you will see here in the next 5 minutes. The only preseason favorite in any of the 12 award markets, American League, National League combined, that is still the current favorite, Wyatt Langford, the rookie for the Rangers at plus 250 to win the AL Rookie of the Year before the season, plus 135 now. You see comeback player, reliever of the year, manager of the year as well. That's a pretty interesting tidbit on Wyatt Langford, still the favorite to win AL Rookie of the Year.
No, it's an interesting market to look at overall, because if gambling was so easy, Ben, they would just line up the odds and be like, yep, that's exactly how they're going to finish from opening day all the way through the season. That's why if you handicap, do your due diligence and get a little bit of luck, you can find some really good pricing compared to what we saw from the beginning of the season to what you're now getting now. And again, just looking at the MVP market over there in the AL, Judge and Soto. Of course, Judge deserves to be a minus 370 price here. And then we'll get to the American League and the MVP there. Of course, those guys should be favorites, but it's interesting always to see where those price points started and where they're at now, because a lot of times you can be that armchair quarterback. I knew this guy was going to do this. No, you didn't. Otherwise, you would have bet it on opening day at that point.
AL Manager of the Year, A.J. Hinch of the Tigers was the short favorite entering, but it's another American League Central team with a young skipper, Stephen Vogt, in his first year at the helm in the land, that has the Guardians in first in the AL Central and a minus 155 price to win AL Manager of the Year. Now to the National League. Ronald Acuna Jr., reigning NL MVP, was the favorite before the year at 5-1. About 2 weeks into the season, it was Mookie Betts, but Mookie Betts placed on the IL. Now it's Shohei Ohtani at a minus 380 price. The biggest movement is for Chris Sale in pretty much every category. His Atlanta teammate, Spencer Strider, short favorite to win the National League Cy Young Award at plus 380, but of course out for the remainder of this season. Sale on opening day, Donnie, 35-1. now plus 125, less than half a buck in front of Zach Wheeler, who had the second best price for the Phils before the year behind Strider, still the second best number behind another Atlanta starter.
Yeah, it's wild there. You take a look at that MVP market to start, and Shohei Ohtani coming in at that plus 950 price, because coming to the National League, he's going to lose some luster. Not because he's a superstar player changing leads and going to a new team that has a lot of great prospects already for MVP on it, but we expected him to be pitching. He's not pitching. He's only a DH. Therefore, you get that downgrade of close to 10-1, and then you find out he's a minus 380 price because he's unbelievable at the plate, and due to injuries and some other things happening in the National League, he deserves to be the favorite. It'll be interesting because I think that line can certainly shorten up by the end of the season as long as most of the guys in that top 5, top 6 stay healthy. I don't think he's going to run away unless we see something historic, 65 home runs, 150 RBI, something in that range. But when you are taking a look at that Cy Young market, nobody saw this from Chris Sale. You thought maybe he could reach back to those White Sox days and early Red Sox days and say, you know what, show me a glimpse of that over a couple weeks to try to help us out here, and you can be our third or fourth starter on this team. He's now taken over as, quite frankly, the ace of that staff due to injury, but that's one of those leaps that I don't think anybody's just saying, hey, you know what? I knew Sale was going to bounce back and be the best pitcher in the National League here before the season started. That wasn't happening.
Sale a hefty favorite at minus 600 as well to win the NL Comeback Player of the Year. 13 wins, the most in Major League Baseball, a 13-3 record, a 2.70 ERA. Of course, one of the stories of this first half of the MLB campaign, Paul Skeens, and what he has done in the 11 Skeens days in the history of Major League Baseball. Now, minus 1,100 to a National League Rookie of the Year. They're already etching out his name on the hardware in the trophy right now. Maybe the more compelling argument for Skeens, that 5-1 price, third best to win NL Cy Young. That could become drastically shorter if the Pittsburgh Pirates, now at 500 the All-Star break, 48 and 48, can rally here in the second half of the year to be an NL wildcard contention. And then one final thing from a narrative perspective, Craig Counsell, of course, the bombshell, leaving the Brewers in the offseason to become the manager of the Chicago Cubs. A little bit of a ha-ha moment as Pat Murphy, in his first year as Milwaukee's manager, is the favorite to win NL Manager of the Year. Hour number 2 starts after the break here on SportsGrid.